I know there's a lot of really great networking going on. It's an incredible crowd, so appreciate everybody being here. Thank you for that. So for those that don't know me that in the audience, my name is Mike Wood, Deputy Commissioner here at DCJS, the Office of Public Safety, and I work for Chuck Tyree. In all seriousness, they do just a fantastic job. This is a great event. Things are going good. I hope you agree. We try to make it better every year and get your feedback, so I know you'll hear about it again, but please make sure at the end of this that you give us honest feedback about how everything went. All right, so this is all about science, evidence-based stuff, so I'm going to do a scientifically unscientific poll, I guess I would say. So by a show of hands, who's first time to this conference? It's our 6th year. Can you show me? First-timers? Wow. All right, that's good. All right, so, and as we heard, the 6 years ago was our first one that we did. So can I have a show of hands of people been here, not every year, but they were at the first one at the Gideon Putnam? Can you show me your hands? So it's almost about equal, so that's good. All right, so for those that were here 6 years ago, our first keynote speaker, inaugural event, was a gentleman named Jim Bierman. If you may remember that. He was the president of the Police Foundation, believe it or not. And the Police Foundation itself, with Jim's presence, and he was here too, I think, of the first 5 years, was one of the first national entities that started to recognize and acknowledge the work that was being done in New York by this collective group here in evidence-based policing and strategies to reduce violence, homicides and shootings. So around that time, so you're talking late 2014, 2015 timeframe, around that time, a gentleman named Jim Burch was joining the Police Foundation after a long and distinguished career in the federal service. And, as you have your packets and you can look through the bios, I'm not going to read his bio. I know it's abbreviated. There's a lot more to him. But around that time, he joined the Police Foundation as the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, if I'm not mistaken. So in the bio, you'll see his background and all the agencies and things that he's done. But I just want to mention a couple things that are not mentioned in his bio that you may be familiar with. So he was instrumental in the Smart Policing Initiative, which I think we know all about. Many grants out there and evidence-based work and science and integrating that in criminal justice communities across the United States. He's also involved in VALOR. This is the development and implementation of VALOR, the Officer Safety Initiative, and other things like that. We also heard yesterday about the Evidence-Based Policing Hall of Fame at the Center for Evidence-Based Crime Policy at George Mason. He's a Hall of Fame member, distinguished group. And finally, he's, for those police officers in the room and those affiliated, he's also on the board of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, among, I'm sure, many other boards. He's a real busy guy, and we're really, really happy to have him in here with us. So just by way of introduction, just finally here, I just want to share one quote. When he joined the Police Foundation, this is 5 years ago or something, as a VP, a guy named Jim Bierman was quoted in the press release as saying, "We're delighted that such an experienced and dynamic law enforcement leader is joining the Police Foundation. James Burch has been at the forefront of promoting innovation and science-based policing practices throughout the nation, and we are excited that he will bring the expertise to help the Police Foundation continue on the cutting edge of modern policing." So that's why we're here, right? So I can't tell you how pleased we are that 6 years later, under new leadership, and a guy with the credentials and a busy guy like Jim Burch is here to join us here. So please join me in welcoming Jim Burch.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. I don't know about you all, but I think I'm going to try to hire Mike to come to the foundation and introduce me everywhere I go. It was the best introduction by far. I only wish it were halfway accurate. But thank you very much. It is a great honor to be here with all of you in Albany, New York today, and it is certainly an honor to be a part of this conference. And let me tell you a little bit about why, because I suspect you've heard that before from many people that start their comments off by telling you why they're honored to be with you and be a part of a meeting that you are a part of. But if you look at the agenda for the conference that we are at today, you'll see something very different about the agenda than what you would see from most law enforcement conferences or even other just violence reduction conferences around the country. And what I noticed about that agenda is that there's not just one session that has the words evidence-based policing in its title. There's multiple sessions, keynote sessions, workshops. It appears many times throughout. It's a theme of this conference. And to me, that says something very unique about the nature of this meeting that we are all at today and the nature of the interactions. And as I talked to Mike and to Michael Green before the conference, and Chuck as well, in their remarks, they talked about the importance of this gathering in giving an opportunity for law enforcement professionals at multiple levels, state, local, national, federal, to be here to share with each other about what they're doing in evidence-based policing. So different, so needed, so important. And I think this is part of the reason why earlier this year in June, I had the privilege of being a part of the Center for Evidence-Based Crime Policy at George Mason University. They have a crime symposium, evidence-based policing symposium that takes place every year. In June of this year, Mike Green, Director Mike Green from the Department of Criminal Justice Services here, received the 2019 Distinguished Achievement Award during that event. He was nationally recognized for his leadership here in New York. And now that I'm here and I see this agenda and I see this gathering of people in front of me, I certainly see why. I certainly see the importance of the work that he's doing. And DCJS, frankly, from my time at the federal government, when I was serving as the acting director for the Bureau of Justice Assistance, which is one of DOJ's largest funding entities, I had the opportunity to work directly with DCJS and all of the other state criminal justice planning agencies around the country. I can tell you, DCJS has been a leader. The staff at DCJS is making a difference. They're pushing ahead in areas like crime analysis, real-time crime analysis, evidence-based policing, and many, many other areas, and you all are a part of that by being here today. So before I go further, let me just ask everybody to join me in giving a round of applause to DCJS for putting on a fantastic conference. So what we have here really is an incredible example of the leadership that we want and really desperately need at the state and local level around the country, and frankly, we need it at the federal level as well. Evidence-based policing is one of the top priorities at the Police Foundation. When I became president after Jim Bierman, who you've heard about previously, Jim was a great leader, a great visionary about where we want to go in the future, and Jim retired in December of 2018. And when I was able to take over in his shoes for the Police Foundation, I really decided that there would be two priorities for us to focus on initially. One of those being evidence-based policing. Evidence-based policing has an important relationship to the National Police Foundation. Evidence-based policing as a term, as a phrase, as a concept, was initially conceived in Larry Sherman's publication that he put together. He was at the University of Maryland. He had just left the National Police Foundation, where he served as the research director for many years. He produced a publication as part of our Ideas in American Policing series, and the title of that publication is Evidence-Based Policing, where he was introducing this concept. How many of you have ever read that? So I just see a few hands. It's an important publication for all of us to go back and read. And the reason is because Larry contemplated so much in that publication and defined what would make that concept different from other policing paradigms that existed at that day. This was in 1989, if I haven't mentioned it. 1989, he wrote this publication. But there's a lot that's left in that publication today that I would encourage each and every one of us to revisit. Now, some of it, as you read it, you may say that was right in 1989. It's not necessarily the right thing today, but it's still an important concept for us to look at. We're simply not doing enough in the vast majority of places in our view. And disappointingly, I have to say that I've seen a number of examples of attempts to redefine what evidence-based policing means in ways that I don't think are always constructive or always supportive of what it is that we are trying to do. And as Larry said in his publication, you're going to hear this term or this phrase a few more times today, quote, "We may all be entitled to our own opinions, but we're not entitled to our own facts." Sadly, the word fact seems to have become a little bit fuzzy in this current day and age. So I would encourage you, if you have a chance, to go back and look at Larry's publication, which is on our website. It's policefoundation.org. You can search it through Ideas in American Policing, Evidence-Based Policing. You will find his publication there. You can download it, you can share it, review it. He talks a lot about how it is much more than simply identifying programs that have been evaluated or found to be effective and replicating them somewhere else. In fact, there's much more that's contemplated in that publication about what must happen in each one of the agencies that claim to be evidence-based, right? Internal work that we must do to assess our strategies, our tactics, each and every day, and to learn from those, learn from the successes, as well as learning from the failures. And this is what is part of what was originally called evidence-based policing, so I encourage you to go back and take a look at that. But this isn't the only place where I have concerns. And I know when I talk about evidence-based policing to this group, in large part, I'm preaching to the choir. You wouldn't be here today if you weren't supportive of the concept of evidence-based policing and doing things differently. There's another area that I think is vitally important and is now one of our top priorities at the Police Foundation that I'd like to talk to you about. I'm gravely concerned about the frictions and tensions between police and community, including those tensions that may be worsened or inflamed by the fact that there are polarized views in America, strong support or trust for law enforcement among wide portions of society, and at the same time, deep mistrust and suspicions among other parts of our communities. The recent Starbucks controversy in Tempe, Arizona, how many of you followed that or were aware of it? So not everybody. This is where officers went into a Starbucks while on duty in uniform and were asked to leave by one of the staff of the Starbucks there because one of the customers asked Starbucks to have them leave because they were uncomfortable and felt threatened by the presence of the officers in the restaurant. So they were asked to leave and they complied. But as a result of that, there was a major sort of media frenzy, at least within social media. And for some time, this went back and forth about why these officers were asked to leave. So that controversy really drove home this division. The comments on social media were excruciating. And sadly, from both sides of the debate, those that supported law enforcement and those that seemed to not support law enforcement, many were equally unhelpful, polarizing, and undermine a key aspect of Peelian principles, particularly that the police are the public and the public are the police. Recent data from Pew Research suggests that younger generations, those in the 18 to 29 category particularly, are substantially less trusting of law enforcement than those above age 30, and even more less trusting than those above age 50. To us, this forecasts the possible expansion of these kinds of tensions that we saw in the Tempe exchange and in other community events, and perhaps they are reflective of the incredible struggles facing agencies in terms of recruitment and retention. So we, those of us who work in policing and justice and community organizing and violence prevention, we have some among us who come from circles of academia, who come from circles of advocacy, who are in the justice system, in law enforcement agencies, in communities and elsewhere, that may seek to sometimes benefit from these tensions and these conflicts, both personally and otherwise. And we have elected officials and pundits who thrive on these tensions in order to secure their own positions and views. This is a recipe for disaster and could ultimately be a threat to our democracy and to the rule of law. I'm not here to say that the state of policing is perfect and should never be criticized and is not deserving of a healthy dose of skepticism. To do that, I would betray the history, the 50-year history of the National Police Foundation. This is the role that we have played for 50 years to question where we are and what we do and how to proceed further. So we have problems. We have issues, like everyone else. We sometimes lack or ignore opportunities for advancement of our profession. We often disregard science. We turn away from opportunities, and we seemingly are deaf and blind to the concerns expressed by many, among them those in our communities who need us most. There are racial, economic, and social injustices that may well undermine our noble profession. We cannot ignore them. While there may be some explanations proffered and solutions to these challenges we cannot accept or consider, we must listen, and we must attempt to understand. We must attempt to find their truth and be supportive of their perspective while setting aside the desire to attack the inconsistencies and the falsehoods that we may perceive or that may really exist. The concerns I raise are not unique to law enforcement. They are often more general and in many ways maybe societal reactions to broader concerns and societal developments and changes in democracy as well as generational perspectives. But what can we, all of us in this room, do about this as we ourselves feel the effects of that in our work every single day in communities across America? So I believe that the National Police Foundation, and I hope you will join us in this, have a responsibility to support our noble profession and to support our communities in confronting some of these issues. To do that, we must understand the issues and the ways in which they impact policing. We must understand them, we must address them head on in ways that are constructive and will result in changes that will mitigate some of these underlying tensions and concerns. To me, this means a few specific things. One, recognizing that not everyone loves or hates the police, and there are reasons for both viewpoints. We must work hard to not simply disregard the ones we don't agree with, but to try best to listen and inform them. Two, we must investigate the questions that pundits desire to answer without fact and offering a scientific and fact-based explanation that may support or challenge the status quo in policing. Keeping in mind that there is a difference between opinion and fact. We are entitled to the first, not to the second. And this even has impact on how we speak informally. So I was in a meeting 2 days ago in Washington where a state law enforcement leader who has a strong national voice made a statement about 90% of the people arrested in a particular jurisdiction that this person was from were under the influence of methamphetamine. Is that a fact or is that an opinion? It may be, but it may be a fact, but it can't be an opinion. Right? We can't operate on this way. Throwing these facts around, throwing around figures that have no basis in fact, and confusing fact and opinion undermines what we are trying to address and what we are trying to improve. Number three, we must contribute to the evidence base that police and associated decision makers need to ensure the sound approaches are implemented in policing, right? This is exactly what you're doing here today. Number four, we must acknowledge some ugly truths about our past and about the profession that we love. And I think you'll hear more about this later on in the conference. Be it structural or other racism or discrimination, other economic harms, or other malpractice, it must be acknowledged and it must be addressed. And this is not to suggest that I'm always referring to an individual person who works in this profession. In many ways, these impacts that we are talking about are structural. They are organizational, they are system-oriented, and so we will have to work together to try to address them going forward. Number 5, we have to shine a very bright light of truth on the positive and impactful work of this profession that's done each and every day. And I don't just mean shining a light on the days in which we are in the community for a block party or a parade. I mean shining a light on the profession and the professional work that is done each and every day by many of you in this room, by many of you and your colleagues on the streets every single day. It is often taken for granted. We must shine a light on the professional, heroic work that is being done every single day in streets across America, defying some of the criticisms that we have out there, but we need to address them as well. We have the opportunity to shine the light and as a result see how our agencies and our officers are leveraging science in their work. They're demonstrating honor, they're demonstrating integrity, and we can't let that be taken for granted. So taking this path may require us to take on some controversial positions and to ask some questions that may be easier left unasked. We will be required to confront some who have it wrong and some who are dismissive of the realities that must also be confronted. We must take bold new paths on what is right and call out what is wrong, including a strong and vocal commitment to ensure just and fair outcomes for everyone. We also believe that we must confront misleading and in some cases inaccurate statements about strategies that have been encouraged and some have been encouraged to believe are absolutely effective or absolutely ineffective, but we know the opposite is true. We see this every day in the media, and sadly, we often see it even within our own profession, in blogs and political speeches. It's harmful. We must commit ourselves to staying true to the idea that we are entitled to our opinions, but not to our own facts. In closing, I want to applaud each of you for being here today. And again, I want to applaud our friends at DCJS who have long been pioneers among state planning agencies across the U.S. in so many areas. I leave with you one request, that you go forward in your work by educating yourself on the issues that we have to confront together, helping others not to confuse opinion and fact, and to allow facts and science to be our guides in everything that we do. We must do this truthfully, transparently, and with a sustained commitment to regain the trust of the upcoming generations and to strengthen the role of policing and justice in building and in maintaining a just and fair society. So thank you very much for listening today. I hope that you've taken something away from this, and I hope you enjoy this great conference. Thank you very much.